welcome to our new podcast called The Sober Truth. My name is Samantha.
My name is Aaron.
And we're going to be your host for today. We're going to be talking about youth substance abuse in Scarborough. And our episode for today, the first episode, is actually about what's really going on in Scarborough. And actually, in my school today, I had a funny story where during lunchtime, there were a couple of guys, they were smoking in the staircase area right where the math classrooms were. And so when people came back from lunchtime, the whole staircase was full of it would just smell like smoke. There was still the white smoke particles, I could call them. But there was just a bunch of smoke in the hallways. It smelled like smoke. They taped off the staircase, and so nobody could go up the staircase to go to class for math.
That's crazy.
Everyone had to go onto the other side of the school to take the other staircase to go up for math. I was almost late, but I ran. But crazy.
That's crazy to think that smoking and substance abuse could affect the way that you go to class even. I have a similar story because when I went to the washroom after doing my test not long ago, I went and inside was just a group of boys congregating and they were just passing around a vape or whatever they were doing. I couldn't do my business, so I went downstairs to see if that washroom was available. Go inside and the same thing was happening. So it's crazy to think how even the substance abuse that people don't think affect anybody else can affect somebody else in ways that you might not expect.
And there's so many risks to it too, just because it is smoke, right? And every school has fire alarms, so those could go off.
Yeah.
People could think they're in real danger. And not just that, but in the mind of a teenager, I would say, at least in my experience, going into the bathroom and just seeing one or two kids vaping or smoking or whatever they're doing, it's not too bad because, everyone's minding their own business. But when there's a whole group just in bathrooms vaping, at least me, I feel just really scared going in, really scared walking past them. Even, after I've done my business, I go to wash my hands. For some reason, I don't know, maybe it's just them specifically, but I can just feel them looking at me. And it's just an uncomfortable situation to be in.
That's what I was about to say. It's probably really uncomfortable to just have somebody watching you that whole time doing what they're doing. And they're not even supposed to be doing that in the washroom. So.
And I would say that, especially during school, at least for me now, it's exam season. And so everyone is studying like crazy. Everyone's, studying for exams and no one's really had a break. And I would say that for a lot of people, using substances, drinking, smoking, those are all what you would consider a break. And so I've heard a lot of people talking about how after exams are over, they're going to be lighting up, they're going to be getting lit, they're going to be going to, someone's house and everyone's going to meet up and everyone's going to smoke. And, everyone, has their own lives and the way they cope with things and deal with things.
For sure.
And, it's really none of my business to tell them what to do and what not to do, but I feel like always sort of relying on substances for fun is really scary, especially at our age, because why is it that it's the first thought to be right after I finish studying, right after I finish exams, let's all just go smoke?
That ties really well into parties after exams, because especially when you're done all the exams that you have, and especially in the senior grades where everything is just crowding your mind and you have to cram everything before you take those exams, you feel I have a break finally, let me just go enjoy my teenage life and let me do something fun. And results of that can be parties, and as a result of the parties can be substance abuse. At certain parties, even during special occasions like Halloween, not even just after exams, but Halloween, Christmas, any holidays where teenagers can get together and congregate as one, it's really easy for substances to just go around, spread like wildfire, especially in those small contained environments.
I know a lot of the places that I've been to, it's the whole house is full of smoke. It is kind of scary, but I would say especially, at least in the area that I live, I would say we both live in East Scarborough, I would say.
East Scarborough.
Yeah, and not to throw any shade, but I just feel like it's a very different area, as in there's a lot of people engaging in substance abuse, and especially people my age, especially teenagers.
Yeah.
And not only that, but other dangerous things. But I'll be walking out of my neighborhood, waiting at a bus stop, and there's just a group of people vaping. And I feel like it is so common, especially in teenagers, and especially I feel like vaping, but it is so common that when adults walk past them or cars or bus, even bus drivers, right? They'll pull up to the stop and then, the kids will be vaping or whatever, and then they'll get onto the bus And they'll stop when they go in, but then in the back of the bus where they sit, they just continue, and nobody really says anything about it. And I feel like maybe if it was a different neighborhood, a different place, a different time, I feel like a lot of people would have said things about it, but maybe everyone's just so accustomed to the way that things are right now.
That's really right, but when you brought up vaping and how it's more like common to see teenagers vaping, I feel like vaping is also just marketed toward teenagers more, because I get adults do vape and all that, but seeing the teenagers that do vape, especially in our school environments and even in our neighborhoods, it's crazy to think that those teenagers who aren't even supposed to be touching any sort of substances at all are the most common demographic for vaping.
And like the way that vapes are designed, I'm not even gonna lie, they look cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Like there are ones with screens on them where you could play games and call people. There are like action figures, and it is so cool. And it is so scary to see how everyone is just sort of falling for that hype and seeing the way it looks so cool and using it as a way to look cool. And I get it from one point, but from another point, it is so dangerous to their health.
Yeah, because vaping is so advertised as so like kid friendly in a way. Like even you can see on cigarette packets they have notices that say, oh, these are the effects of what happens to you when you do these substances. For vaping, I don't think a lot of people understand that vaping is basically the same thing as smoking, but it's like inhaling smoke.
Because a lot of people say that vaping is 10 times better than smoking. It's really not.
It isn't, because it's doing the same process to your lungs that you're doing to yourself. And it's not even the physical aspect of it too, it's just the mental aspect of knowing that, oh, I'm doing a substance so I can feel good. Stemming happiness from doing something isn't the right way to be mentally, especially as a growing teenager. To seek happiness in certain substances instead of trying to like spend your high school life like what we're in right now, talking to friends, spending good time with other people, looking out for substances isn't the right way to go.
I agree. And I feel like especially in Scarborough, maybe because of social media, maybe because of friends, maybe because of other aspects of people's lives, but in Scarborough it is such a heavily populated area, and there's so many teenagers, and everyone's just following in what everyone else is doing. And so because of that, there's so much of everything going on at once, whether it be the mall, whether it be buses, and even school. And it really affects your quality of life and everyone around you, their quality of life as well.
Like speaking of people, there's a lot of people that I used to know growing up as a kid where we would be good friends, but when they turn into certain influences, like they turn to certain people who are already doing those things and they decide to follow their path, they become one of those people who do those substances and engage in those kind of activities as a result. And it's crazy to think that a person can change so quickly from being a calm person who didn't need to rely on substances to their whole life like revolving around, oh, I need that high, oh, I need to go hang out with this person to do this, that, and etc.
And actually in Scarborough specifically, it's really easy to access things like that. I would say you could go to any convenience store ever, and a lot of them sell cigarettes and vapes, and a lot of them have signs that say that you need to show ID, right? But I've seen people just go up to the counter and ask for one, and they get sold it. Alcohol is a little bit trickier, but it's not very difficult.
Especially when it's at a house, because I feel like alcohol can be bought at a house for a party, and anybody who has hands that can just take it.
Even like house parties, like let's say people are. Actually, I have a story about this where when my brother was underage at the time, we had to go to someone's house, and he was friends with that sort of friend group where it's like they're always smoking and drinking, and they drive and they feel so cool, which is like great for you. But at this house party, they went into the person's kitchen, and while all the adults were in like a different bedroom area, they took like 2 or 3 bottles back to one of the other kids' rooms, and they just sat there and drank. And I was a lot younger than them, and so I was just sort of there, and I was told not to tell anyone, and I was just watching, and I felt so scared that we were gonna get caught. But it's just like, it's not just buying, right? It's so easy to go to someone their house, adults, even their own parents. People do take alcohol from their own parents.
For sure.
And it's just so easy to access it, and that's why so many people are doing it.
And it's like a culture in a way to say, oh, like you've turned this age, you get your first drink, but it's not even legal sometimes, right? Like I know people, like cousins, family, and friends that I know that have like had their first drink, quote unquote, because of their parents and their guardians or whoever the whoever they're surrounded by. And they'll just be like, here, have a little, it won't be that bad. It turns into, a habit. And you don't know like how your body can react to certain substances, right? It can react violently or it can react in a way that you have to depend on it from that day forward, which is kind of crazy to think about.
And then I know that I would say that the most, at least here, the most common substances, alcohol, vaping, cigarettes, weed, like marijuana, these are all really common. And I feel like overconsumption of them is very dangerous, but on sort of like occasional party use, because we're teenagers after all. I feel like for a long time now that's sort of been the norm. And so it's not that big of a deal, but I would say that now, especially things like fentanyl are getting pretty big, Molly, ecstasy, and I would say that those are a lot different and a lot more dangerous, especially things like fentanyl, because I have been to parties where there's these little bags with pills in them, right? And you don't know what's in it, and people are just handing them out, people are paying for them. And I've had a friend who, she's taken one of those bags actually, and it's just a party, and she was trying to get me to do it too. But just the thought of not knowing what it was, I felt so scared.
For sure.
And so she took 2 of those pills. I can't remember exactly the color, but she took 2 of them, and she started seizing after a while, right? And so we had to like call an ambulance, and everyone was trying to run away, not get caught. But I was so worried for her, and there was fentanyl in the pills, right? And no one knew about that. And it's just so crazy and scary to think that you don't know what's in the things that you take, because especially teenagers, a lot of the ways that we get substances aren't legal, right? Whether it be through like plugs or dealers. And so you don't know what's in it. And it's so scary to think that it's laced with things like fentanyl, which are so dangerous and so potent that even just a little bit can kill you.
I mean, to think about how easy substances are accessible is one thing, but then to think about how easily somebody can lace them, somebody can put something else in them, and like imagine, and you don't know the dangers with it because there's no safety precautions with certain substances, like you said, fentanyl. There's nobody that's monitoring the amount of fentanyl that some person put into a certain pill. So whatever happens to you happens. You just wanted that high, you can have it. But it's not like there's any security around it for like levels to it. But the fact that that's so easy to happen to is why substances in general, and especially for people that are like under the counter or like not really like government approved or whatnot, like that can be really dangerous.
And like I feel like just like the whole like big part of like the party scene and all the drugs and everything, a big sort of contributing factor I would say is peer pressure, and not necessarily that anyone's making you take drugs, because I mean realistically no one, hope not, no one's forcing it into your mouth, right? But it's like, then again, because I've had thoughts like these too, where you're out somewhere and you're with friends who are doing things like that, and they offer it to you, and you are scared, but everyone else is doing it, right? And
so
it's not like
comfortable to do it anyway.
And it's not that like everyone's gonna start bullying you all of a sudden. It's just that in that thought in your head, you're like, they're gonna look at me differently. I'm, gonna be different. I'm gonna be more scared, And so, just not even anyone really forcing you, but the own thoughts in your head sort of, force you into doing things that you wouldn't do, right? And it's so, it's so scary, because times like that where it's just like, I'll try it just once, or because I'm with them, I'll just take it because I don't want to look different. And things like that can so easily cause addiction, because everyone says, oh, I'll just try it once, and I won't do it again. But like 9 times out of 10, it's never just once.
Yeah. And even if it is just once, it can result in something so dramatic to the point where you will step away from that substance, which can be good. Then again, you're risking your life trying to do something that you weren't supposed to do in the first place, right?
Because there are things like, I'm not completely 100% sure about this, but there's certain allergies. People have panic attacks after doing certain substances. Especially marijuana causes psychosis and like schizophrenia too. And that's over prolonged use, but still there's these things that can happen because of using substances, and even just once can change your life.
I remember how we talked to our expert when we did our interview, and he did talk about how there are some effects of marijuana that I never knew about. Like he was talking about like how they can go into psychosis, cirrhosis, they can have like problems within their lungs.
Yeah, and then also there was the movement was it? It was if you smoke too much marijuana and it's like all the time, you constantly throw up, and you can't keep food down when you constantly throw up.
There's a certain name for it, but I remember him talking about it.
Yeah, and then I will say though, one thing is, I feel like a lot of substances, they do sort of relate back to maybe a little bit of eating disorder behavior, because I have seen a lot of people that because of like smoking, they've like thinned down a lot, and you know it's when you slim down so drastically in such like a small period of time, it makes you very self-conscious of your body, and at first you think you're just doing substances and you're just having fun, right? But then it can cause other effects mentally, where it's like you have body dysmorphia and you don't know how to see yourself, and it can cause you to do more irrational things. And like I would say that vaping, drinking, actually all of it, I would say that all substance abuses has real mental side effects, especially if you're already going through things like depression and anxiety and any sort of psychosis, sort of mental problem, right? When taking substances, those only increase the way that you feel, and it only just heightens those mental problems and makes your life more difficult.
It's not that even substance abuse can create mental illness, it's that mental illness can stem you to start substances. It goes both ways, but it also affects people differently depending on your situation. Like I know people who have been in like their depressive states, and they were like, you know what, I'm just gonna get out of this depression one way or another, and I'm gonna like do something. I'm gonna do something about it, and they're gonna take the wrong decision by doing something that's not right, right?
And I know especially like teens nowadays, youth, there are so many people that struggle with mental health issues.
Yeah.
And instead of because getting help or talking to people, it's so scary.
It can be very scary.
And so instead of that, they use substances to cope, and it's so common now. It is all over social media, and it's all over just wherever you go. It is so common, and just everyone is doing it.
Like getting away from reality by taking like a hallucinogen or like whatever it may come. Just using that substance to like take yourself out of your own life and be in your own world in your head or something like that.
Sort of like looking back on everything we said now, it is so crazy to see, like, over the years, there's just like this drastic change in an increase of substance abuse, especially in teens.
Yeah.
And I feel like it just is like we need to create some sort of movement or some sort of just awareness to sort of wake everyone up, because people need a wake up call, because the fact that it's so common, the fact that it's so relevant, the fact that it's so popular to do these things, for everyone to do them,
for sure.
Even people who wouldn't, even think about that, it is so common that we need to wake people up, and we need to talk about it.
Because you see that it's getting so popular to the point where nobody's holding each other accountable. Like, I feel like maybe in the past, it might have been like if somebody was doing a substance, a friend, a peer would have been like, that's not good for you, why are you doing that? But nowadays, it's more like, hey, can I try some? Like,
and why aren't you?
That's not right, and that's crazy to think about how people have lost a sense of accountability to look out for each other to the point where it feels like looking out for each other is like the wrong thing to do. It's more like we have to engage in it together so we're friends. That's not how it's supposed to work, especially as a friendship and especially as like a relationship with anybody rather.
And people create friendships merely based on substances.
Yes.
Because I've known people that have met in, school bathrooms bathrooms period. Bathrooms get so tired, but bathrooms period, and someone's vaping, someone's smoking. Another person asks, "Can I join you? Can I try this?" And then they become friends, and they have a really tight friendship, which I will give. They do have a good friendship, but everything stems from substances.
Exactly.
And then, when one person decides to get sober, all of a sudden the other person, they no longer want to be friends, or they're angry that, they're leaving them behind. And that affects both sides so much.
That encompasses what we were talking about too, how like even students, they meet in the washroom instead of meeting in actual classes, which is not good because school is meant for education, right? And it's crazy to think about how substances can connect people to do certain things, but then disconnect them from ever talking to each other when they're not quote unquote high, right? But to sum up everything that we said that how in youth in Scarborough, substances are really common, and they're like, from personal experiences, we've seen how they can affect lives of people that may not even come close to substances, right? It's not just you being affected, it's the persons that you see, the people that you would interact with, the people that you might just like bump into in the hallway, right? And it's crazy to think that parties, that get-togethers where teenagers are supposed to come together as like friends, those are like the prime example of environments where substances are like really common, and it's not a good thing, and it's getting out of hand as well. Like, it's getting rampant in what you said about fentanyl, right? And even as we do grow up in East Scarborough, I get we are from Scarborough, and Scarborough's an amazing place, but it has its downsides, and it does have like that environment where it's really popular and it's really easy to just get into that kind of vibe, where we need to like get that high, we need to be with the people to get high, we need to do this to feel that. But in a way, we have to, like you said, get that wake-up call to be like, it isn't right, and we need to hold each other accountable to the point where not just to stop each other from doing the things, but to have healthier relationships stemming from actual one-on-one talks.
Conversations.
Yeah, for sure. But that's a good sum up of what we just talked about.
Yeah, and I feel like that wake-up call, it starts now, and it starts with our podcast, and it starts with the sober truth, because it is about being sober, and it is about telling the truth, and this is the truth. And so this is the wake-up call that we have. Thank you so much for joining us on our first episode of The Sober Truth. We hope to see you guys next time. My name is Samantha.
My name is Aaron.
And have a great night.
Tune in next time.